Here are Grandma's 37 oddly useful baking hacks you'll wish you knew sooner. Use potato water in yeast dough. Grandma never let good potato water go to waste, and for good reason. The starchy liquid left behind after boiling potatoes gives yeast dough a tender, pillowy texture. The starch feeds the yeast and adds subtle flavor, helping bread rise better and stay moist longer. Let the potato water cool to lukewarm before using, since hot water can kill the yeast. You can use it in place of plain water in nearly any bread recipe. For an even softer crumb, combine the potato water with a spoonful of sugar or honey before mixing it into the flour and yeast. Start pound cakes in a cold oven. Did you know that starting pound cakes in a cold oven results in a more tender crumb and that signature cracked top? Instead of preheating, place the cake pan inside a cold oven and set the temperature, letting it warm slowly as the cake bakes. This method works best with dense batters rich in butter and sugar. It encourages a slow rise that keeps the texture moist and close-grained. Avoid opening the oven door during the first 45 minutes. For a golden crust, grease the pan generously with butter and dust with sugar instead of flour before pouring in the batter. Grease cornbread pans with bacon fat. If Grandma ever baked cornbread, she likely reached for bacon grease instead of butter or oil. The smoky, salty richness of rendered bacon fat seasons the skillet and infuses the cornbread with an unmistakable depth. It crisps the edges beautifully and prevents sticking better than non-stick spray. Use a cast iron skillet preheated with the fat before adding the batter. This forms a golden crust on contact. Save bacon drippings in a jar and store in a cool cupboard for future batches. For added crunch, sprinkle a handful of cornmeal into the hot fat before pouring in your batter to bake. Store cookies with sandwich bread. A soft slice of sandwich bread tucked inside the cookie tin might look odd, but it's an age-old way to keep cookies soft. The bread absorbs excess air and humidity, keeping the cookies fresh for days longer. As the bread stales, moisture transfers to the baked goods without changing their flavor. This is especially helpful for oatmeal or molasses cookies, which tend to dry out quickly. Be sure to replace the bread every 2 days to avoid mold. Here's another great tip. Use white bread rather than whole grain, as it has fewer oils and won't introduce extra odors or flavors. Add orange peel to brown sugar. Burying a few pieces of dried orange peel in your brown sugar can prevent it from clumping and hardening. The natural citrus oils gently hydrate the sugar without making it wet, while also adding a subtle aroma that enhances baked goods. This method has long been favored in kitchens, where airflow and humidity can ruin an open sugar jar. It's best to use thoroughly dried peel, not fresh, to avoid spoilage. You can dry the peel by leaving it out overnight or baking at low heat. A cinnamon stick added alongside the peel will elevate your brown sugar scent. Spoon and level flour. Don't scoop. One common baking misstep is scooping flour directly from the bag, which compacts it and throws off measurements. This leads to dense, dry baked goods instead of soft, tender results. Instead, lightly spoon flour into your measuring cup and level it off with a flat edge. It may seem slow, but it's how recipes were designed to work back when scales weren't common in home kitchens. Even just 2 tablespoons too much can alter texture. To make sure your measurements stay accurate, always avoid packing the flour down. Light and loose is the rule when baking from scratch. Pack brown sugar firmly. Unlike flour, brown sugar should be pressed tightly into the measuring cup until it holds its shape. This ensures you're including the proper amount of moisture and molasses content the recipe calls for. The compacted texture helps create chewy cookies, tender cakes, and rich crumbles. Old-time cooks learned by feel. If it fell out as a solid block, it was right. Loose brown sugar often means dry results. Adding a crust of bread to your sugar can help retain its moisture and prevent it from hardening into a brick between baking days. Level powders with a knife. Precision is everything when measuring leavening agents like baking powder or soda. Even a pinch too much can cause batter to rise too quickly and collapse. To avoid this, scoop the powder using a dedicated measuring spoon, then run a flat knife or straight edge across the top. It creates a clean, level surface, just like recipe developers intended. Measuring by eye often leads to inconsistent results. If you're baking something delicate like sponge cake, this exact step might be what saves your structure from falling flat in the oven. Sift dry ingredients 3 times. Grandma swore by sifting dry ingredients not once, but 3 times to aerate the flour and evenly distribute the salt, baking powder, or cocoa. This was especially vital in the days before pre-sifted flour. Sifting adds air, prevents lumps, and ensures uniform texture, resulting in lighter cakes and smoother batters. Triple sifting may seem tedious, but it improves consistency and prevents pockets of unmixed dry ingredients. After sifting, gently fold the dry mix into your wet ingredients instead of stirring. This will help you avoid overworking the batter. Whisk dry goods if no sifter. If a sifter isn't handy, a large balloon whisk can be your best ally for combining dry ingredients. Whisking incorporates air and breaks up clumps while blending salt, spices, and leavening evenly throughout the flour. It may not provide the same fineness as a triple sift, but it's effective and quick. Many bakers without sifters rely on this time-saving step, especially for muffins or biscuits. To avoid flour clouds, use a bowl wide enough to contain your whisking, and always start gently to avoid scattering your mix across the counter. Warm cold eggs in tap water. Cold eggs can stiffen batter and prevent proper emulsification. To bring them to room temperature quickly without altering flavor, place whole eggs in a bowl of warm tap water for about 10 minutes. This old kitchen trick helps them blend more easily into batters and doughs. Room temperature eggs whip up higher for sponge cakes and help butter-based mixtures emulsify smoothly. Avoid using hot water, which can cook the eggs prematurely. Once warmed, crack eggs into a separate bowl first to check freshness before adding them into your main mixture. Bring all ingredients to room temp. Before you even turn on the oven, there's a secret that elevates nearly every baked good: room temperature ingredients. Butter, eggs, and dairy mix more evenly and trap air better when they're not cold, helping doughs and batters develop the right structure. Cold ingredients can cause uneven textures, dense centers, or even curdled batter. Allow butter to sit for about 30 minutes and eggs for 15. If you forget, place eggs in warm water or cube the butter to speed up softening. When the components are the same temperature, they combine more smoothly. You'll get fluffier cakes and fewer mixing headaches. Add instant coffee to chocolate batters. Chocolate-based desserts benefit from a tiny addition that makes their flavor richer and deeper. Mixing in a spoonful of instant coffee or espresso powder doesn't add a coffee taste, but instead sharpens and intensifies the cocoa. It's a trick bakers have used for years in brownies, chocolate cakes, and even cookies. Simply stir in 1 teaspoon with the dry ingredients or dissolve it into warm water for your recipe. It's a fast way to give homemade treats a gourmet-level boost. Try combining it with a pinch of cinnamon for extra warmth and depth in your next chocolate dessert. Make buttermilk with milk and vinegar. When a recipe calls for buttermilk and your jug is empty, don't panic. You can make a quick version at home. Combine 1 tablespoon of white vinegar or lemon juice with 1 cup of milk, then let it sit for 10 minutes. This sour mixture mimics the acidity and consistency of real buttermilk, which helps activate baking soda and tenderize baked goods. It's ideal for pancakes, muffins, and biscuits. Use whole milk for the best texture and flavor. You can also use plain yogurt thinned with water if you're completely out of milk. Always stir well before using. Add vinegar to pie dough for flakiness. Sometimes the difference between a good pie and a great one is only a splash of vinegar. Adding vinegar to pie dough helps keep the gluten strands from developing too much, resulting in a more tender, flaky crust. Just mix a teaspoon of white or apple cider vinegar into the ice water before incorporating it into your flour and fat mixture. It's a quiet trick that makes rolling easier and baking more successful. Be sure not to overwork the dough once it comes together. Chilling the dough again before baking keeps the crust extra crisp and golden. Use ice-cold water or vodka in pastry. The temperature of your pastry ingredients can make or break a delicate dough. Using ice-cold water, or better yet, vodka, helps minimize gluten development and keeps the butter from melting too soon. Because vodka has a lower water content, it evaporates more quickly, resulting in a lighter, flakier crust. Measure your liquid in advance and refrigerate it until you're ready to use it. Add slowly until the dough just holds together. Avoid kneading too much or the crust will become dense. You can even freeze your flour or butter for extra insurance against premature softening. Bake icebox cakes cold oven style. While icebox cakes traditionally set in the refrigerator, starting them in a cold oven offers an interesting twist. This method works well for layered desserts that benefit from a gentle bake without complete cooking, especially those using thick cream, pudding, or wafers. Begin with a cold oven and keep the temperature very low, allowing the layers to set softly as heat slowly builds. Use a glass or ceramic dish and keep a close watch for signs of firming. Once set, refrigerate overnight for best slicing results. You can also sprinkle crushed nuts between layers for added crunch and flavor contrast. Bake yeast-free peanut butter loaf. Not every loaf needs yeast to rise, and peanut butter makes a surprisingly hearty substitute for fat and structure. By using baking powder instead of yeast, this loaf comes together quickly with no need to proof or knead. The richness of peanut butter adds moisture, while its natural oils keep the crumbs soft and tender. Perfect as a quick breakfast bread or snack, it pairs well with jam or honey. You can also fold in chopped peanuts or a swirl of jelly before baking for a flavor upgrade. Let the loaf cool completely before slicing to keep its shape neat. Preheat cast iron till screaming hot. To achieve a crispy bottom crust or golden edges, nothing beats a screaming hot cast iron pan. Starting your bake in a blazing pan creates immediate contact heat that mimics a professional bakery's oven floor. Whether you're making cornbread, biscuits, or even deep dish pie, preheating the skillet while your oven warms up makes all the difference. Carefully add your dough or batter and listen for that sizzle. It means the crust has already begun. Always use thick oven mitts and rest the pan on a towel-lined counter to protect surfaces. You can even sprinkle in cornmeal before pouring the batter. Dust raisins or nuts with flour before baking. Few things are more frustrating than having all your raisins, nuts, or chocolate chips sink to the bottom of a cake. An easy fix is to toss these add-ins with a bit of flour before folding them into your batter. The flour coating helps them stay suspended, ensuring even distribution throughout the loaf or muffin. This works especially well in thinner batters like quick breads or coffee cakes. Use a tablespoon of the same flour from your recipe so it doesn't affect the final texture. Gently fold in the coated ingredients right before pouring into the baking tin. Toss pie fruit with sugar before filling. Did you know that tossing your fruit with sugar before adding it to a pie shell allows the juices to start drawing out in advance? This not only sweetens your filling, but helps you control sogginess and excess moisture. When the sugar has a few minutes to mingle with the fruit, it begins to dissolve and extract natural liquids, creating a more consistent filling. Let the mixture sit while you prep the crust, then drain off any extra liquid or thicken it with cornstarch. This small step improves both flavor and texture. Add a pinch of cinnamon or lemon zest for brightness. Dust bottom crust to prevent sogginess. Preventing a soggy bottom crust starts long before the pie hits the oven. A light dusting of flour or breadcrumbs on the base of your crust creates a barrier that soaks up excess moisture. This is especially useful for juicy fruit pies or custard tarts. The layer absorbs liquid without altering the flavor, giving you a flakier result. You can also use crushed graham crackers or finely ground nuts for a little extra crunch and taste. Blind baking the crust beforehand adds another layer of protection. Just make sure to let it cool before filling. Freeze butter wrappers to grease pans. Don't toss your butter wrappers, stash them in the freezer, and use them to grease your pans. The leftover butter clinging to the paper is just enough to coat cake tins, bread pans, and even cookie sheets. It's a thrifty method that avoids waste while making sure your bakes release cleanly. Simply pull a frozen wrapper from storage. Let it soften for a minute and use the buttery side to wipe your pan. Keep them stacked in a labeled baggie in the freezer for easy grabbing. This trick also works well for coating measuring cups when working with sticky ingredients. Cover warm cakes with a tea towel. As cakes cool, they often lose moisture to the air, but a simple tea towel can help lock that in. Placing a clean, lightweight cloth gently over a still warm cake helps trap steam without creating condensation. This keeps the surface soft, especially for sponge or snack cakes that can dry quickly. Just be sure the towel doesn't touch any frosting or glaze. It's best to wait until the cake is cool to the touch before wrapping or sealing. You can also use this trick for muffins and quick breads that you want to stay tender on top without sticking to foil. Cool angel food cake upside down. To prevent a light cake from collapsing, flip it Angel food cake depends on air for its structure, and cooling it upside down helps preserve that lofty texture. Most pans are designed with feet or a central tube to rest on a bottle or rack. Inverting the cake keeps it from shrinking as steam escapes. If cooled upright, gravity causes it to fall flat and dense. Be sure to let it cool fully before removing from the pan, or you risk tearing the delicate sides. Use a serrated knife or offset spatula to release it cleanly once set. Bake bread on cornmeal sprinkled stone. For a rustic crunch and better oven spring, bake directly on a stone dusted with cornmeal. The stone retains and radiates heat evenly, giving your loaf a hearty, well-developed crust. Cornmeal acts as both a non-stick layer and a texture booster, creating a pleasant bite on the bottom. It's especially good for round loaves or baguette-style breads where the base should crisp. Preheat your baking stone thoroughly to mimic a brick oven environment, and slide the dough on quickly using a floured peel or inverted sheet pan. You can also experiment with semolina flour for a similar gritty texture. Steam oven with hot water for soft crusts. Steam plays a major role in bread crust development, especially during the first few minutes of baking. Adding a pan of hot water or spritzing the oven walls creates moisture that allows the dough to expand before the crust hardens. This results in a higher rise and a thin, glossy surface. Many rustic or enriched breads benefit from this technique, which can be mimicked even in older ovens. To avoid temperature loss, place your water-filled pan on a lower rack during preheat. Just be cautious with glass bakeware. Use metal to avoid cracking under thermal stress. Rotate pans and switch racks halfway. Uneven oven heat can cause lopsided browning or underbaked centers, but rotating pans makes a big difference. About halfway through your bake, gently turn pans front to back and switch between upper and lower racks if needed. This ensures more even cooking, especially for cookies, cakes, or multiple loaves. Be quick and cautious to avoid heat loss or dropping batter. If baking multiple layers, try to position pans so there's room between them and the oven walls. Avoid opening the oven too early, or your cakes might sink. Wait until the structure is set and the edges begin to pull away. Use toothpick test for doneness. Grandma always swore by the simplest test, a toothpick in the center. If it comes out clean or with only a few moist crumbs, your cake or loaf is ready. This old-fashioned method is quick, reliable, and doesn't require any gadgets. Insert the toothpick at a slight angle to reach the thickest part of the bake. For extra confidence, test in 2 separate spots to be sure you didn't hit a gooey pocket. If you see wet batter, give it another few minutes before checking again. Don't confuse melted chocolate or fruit juice for raw batter. They'll stay on the pick. Bang brownie pans mid-bake for chewiness. It may sound strange, but gently banging the brownie pan partway through baking can improve texture. This technique helps collapse air pockets, creating a denser, chewier center with crackly tops. About halfway through baking, give the pan a firm tap against the oven rack or pull it out and thump it on a protected surface. Grandma used to say it helped settle the fudge, and she was right. Chewier edges and uniform middles are the reward. Make sure the batter has begun to set before tapping to avoid spills. You can also tap once more just before the final minute. Chill cookie dough overnight. Did you know that chilling cookie dough not only enhances flavor, but also controls spread? When dough rests, the flour hydrates, the sugar slowly dissolves, and the fat firms up, making cookies thicker and chewier. The cooler temperature slows spreading in the oven, giving them that perfect golden edge with a soft center. Even a few hours of rest improves texture, but overnight is ideal for complex flavors. This trick also makes prep easier, especially for drop or cutout cookies. For a neater scoop, portion the dough before chilling and store in a covered tin lined with wax paper. Make vanilla sugar with spent pods. Once you've scraped out a vanilla bean, don't toss the pod. It still has flavor to give. Bury the spent bean in a jar of granulated sugar and let it sit for at least a week. The sugar absorbs the rich vanilla aroma, becoming a fragrant substitute for extract in baked goods, tea, or sprinkled over fruit. It's a waste-free way to stretch every bit of that pricey pod. Stir the jar occasionally to help distribute the scent evenly. To intensify the flavor over time, add another spent pod or give the sugar a gentle shake every few days. Shield pie edges with foil strips. Flaky pie crust edges can burn quickly, even when the filling still needs more time. One of the best ways to prevent this is by wrapping the outer crust in foil halfway through baking. Cut thin strips and lightly crimp them around the pie's edge. They act as a heat buffer, slowing browning without affecting the rest of the bake. If you forget until it's almost too late, a last-minute foil cover can still prevent burning. Alternatively, fashion a reusable ring of parchment or use a metal pie shield if you bake frequently and want consistent protection. Brush hot bread with melted butter. Freshly baked loaves benefit from a buttery finish. As soon as the bread comes out of the oven, brushing it with melted butter softens the crust and adds a gentle sheen. Grandma swore by this simple final touch. She'd keep a crock of butter on the stovetop, ready for when the bread was still steaming. This old-fashioned trick also enhances flavor, especially in plain sandwich loaves, dinner rolls, or oatmeal bread. Let the butter soak in naturally rather than slathering heavily. To add an herby twist, melt butter with a pinch of dried thyme or crushed rosemary beforehand. Add cornstarch to meringue on humid days. Humidity can ruin a meringue's structure, causing it to weep or collapse. To guard against this, stir a teaspoon of cornstarch into the sugar before gradually adding it to whipped egg whites. This helps stabilize the foam, absorbing extra moisture and creating a firmer hold. The result is glossy peaks that stay stiff even in muggy kitchens. It's a tried-and-true baker's trick, especially helpful during summer or when making pies with meringue toppings. Just be sure to beat thoroughly between additions. If your meringue still softens, consider reducing baking temperature slightly and extending time to dry it out gently. Sprinkle sugar on crusts before filling. Giving your pie crust a dusting of sugar before filling isn't just decorative, it helps create a barrier. The sugar melts slightly when heated, forming a thin caramelized layer that protects against sogginess, especially with juicy fruits. It's a subtle trick that can make a noticeable difference in texture. Brown sugar can also be used for deeper flavor. Simply sprinkle an even layer over the base once the dough is fitted into the pan, then proceed with your filling. For extra crunch and sparkle, consider brushing the top crust with milk or egg wash and adding coarse sugar. Scoop drop cookies with 2 spoons. When making drop cookies by hand, 2 spoons are your best friends. One to scoop and the other to push the dough onto the baking sheet keeps things tidy and evenly portioned. This old technique predates cookie scoops and still works beautifully for sticky batters like oatmeal raisin or molasses cookies. Use 1 spoon to gather a heaping mound, then scrape with the second to release it cleanly. Dip the spoons in warm water between batches to prevent sticking. To keep spacing consistent, press lightly to flatten each mound slightly before sliding the tray into the oven.